What's going on, VitalSyntax here, and this is some more gameplay from the Close Quarters expansion on Scrap Metal with the MP7. And this is just a great gun to use on any of these Close Quarters maps. It's got a really high fire rate, larger than average magazine, as well as really good hip fire rates, especially with that laser sight. So today I wanted to talk about what would make the perfect first-person shooter, and specifically we're talking about a competitive multiplayer first-person shooter similar to something like Call of Duty, Counter-Strike, Battlefield 3, or Battlefield Bad Company 2, and any of those types of games. And there's a couple different components that I wanted to talk about that I think make up a game that would be perfect in my eyes. But I also wanted to get feedback from you guys and hear what you guys like from a game, or what you would like to see from a game that you haven't seen already. So one of the first things for me is the RPG element. I love unlocking stuff. I love leveling up my character. Some people don't like that. Some people like having everything available to them. Some people don't like the grind. So I don't even see it as a grind, to be honest, but some people do. And it's just kind of personal preference. But for me, that's a huge component. Now, I'm not putting these in order. This isn't like the #1 component that makes a good first-person shooter. No, that's not in order. This is just some of the ones I have thought of. But for me, that RPG element that was, I believe, first introduced in Call of Duty 4 with perks and attachments and leveling up your character, is a huge part, and that's one of the things I love about a lot of these first-person shooter games. And that's also one of the things that, for me, I don't particularly like about the Counter-Strike series, is that there's really no point in playing other than improving your skill. There's no actual indicator of how much you've played, how good of a player you are. There's no really statistics on that. Now, statistic-wise, I can kind of get frustrated with that. I mean, a game like Battlefield has super in-depth statistics. A game like Black Ops had super in-depth statistics. And that kind of can ruin the game for some people, including myself. Not completely ruin it, but it is kind of frustrating when everybody else can view how good of a player you are based on your stats. And yes, I know the skill of a player isn't just based on his stats. There's a lot of other components, but it does give you kind of a good indicator. And the reason I personally don't like having public stats like that, at least certain statistics, is because it promotes certain types of gameplay. For example, if you are showing people's kill-death ratio in a game like Battlefield, where the main focus in at least a lot of the game modes, maybe not team deathmatch or squad deathmatch, but it's something like Conquest or Rush or Squad Rush, the main goal in those game modes is not to get kills, it's to complete the objectives. And when you have something like your kill-death ratio displayed for everybody to see, people will play the game for that statistic, and obviously they're not playing the game how it was meant to be played and how it's fun for other people to be played. But at the same time, I do like having that sense of accomplishment, of having like a leveling system. Maybe not necessarily who's the best player, but who's played the longest, who has the most experience. Or who has the best experience, not necessarily the best player type of thing. That's kind of how I like to see it. Now, there's a lot of other components beyond just the RPG element that I think make up a good game. Another one is it has to have perfect gunplay. So when I talk about gunplay, it includes everything from bullet velocities, damage output, things like fire rate, how the guns interact. Can you aim down your sight? Can you reload your weapon? What are the balance of the weapons? And Battlefield, to me, Battlefield 3 is almost perfect. There are a few guns, specifically the M16A3, that is overpowered, and really needs to get nerfed. It's a ridiculous gun. I think the assault class in general is overpowered. They have the best weapons and they have the best tools. They can basically heal themselves and revive players, which give you a lot of points. Yes, I know it's not necessarily the best class for every situation. You obviously have tons of vehicles in Battlefield 3 on those vehicle maps. But I'm just saying in general, I do feel personally that the assault class is overpowered. And that kind of comes into play, and I think if you want to have the best first-person shooter, you have to have really good gunplay. You have to have perfect balance. You have to have You know, different guns have to be, you know, also have to be realistic too, and the Battlefield does a great job of this. You know, different guns have to have different muzzle velocities. How do the guns, or how much bullet damage do they do? What's the fire rate like? What's the accuracy? And that once again kind of ties back into the balancing of the game. But it just has to have really good gunplay. They have to feel not like toys, not like BB guns or airsoft guns. They have to feel like real guns, and I think that partly has to do with the gunplay and also, you know, sound effects and how they handle and things like that. Another huge element for me is different gameplay styles, and I think Battlefield addresses this pretty well. So Battlefield, unlike a lot of other first-person shooters, has a bunch of different options for gameplay styles. If you're a vehicle player, you can play something like Conquest on a large map. If you're a infantry player like myself, you can play, you know, even Conquest on some of the indoor maps, or you can play Team Deathmatch, Squad Deathmatch, Squad Rush. They have a good variety of large open maps and smaller closed maps. So it gives you a lot of variety, and I think having vehicles makes, you know, adds a huge layer of that, I don't know, at least different types of gameplay. Whereas I think something like Call of Duty has one gameplay style. There's no vehicles to mess around with, and really you have to be kind of just like rushing constantly. There's no real tacticalness to it. And Battlefield has a lot of tactical play in something like Squad Rush or Rush in general, and maybe a little bit less in something like Team Deathmatch or Squad Deathmatch. So I think it has to have both. It has to have the option to kind of play however you want to play. So those are just some of the components that I think make up a really good first-person shooter. So far, and I know the video is cut out, I'm just going to keep talking though. So far, in my opinion, Battlefield 3 has been my favorite first-person shooter of all time. And in my opinion, probably the best first-person shooter of all time. I know a lot of people would disagree with me, say something like Call of Duty 4, or yeah, I've heard of some people say Battlefield Bad Company 2 was the best game, and I would agree on some extent. Those are awesome games, and then obviously you have the whole Counter-Strike fan base that are just, you know, don't even want to move on from that game, and just and I totally understand where they're coming from as well, because Counter-Strike has some really good skill-focused gameplay elements. I think that's another huge component that makes a good first-person shooter. But anyway, feel free to leave a comment down below on any other things that you think make up a good first-person shooter. I might do another video talking about some of the elements that you guys talk about in the comments down below. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to give me a like or a favorite, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.